On paper, and at first we were rejoicing, this is a good draw, but this is by no means a layup.
I am going to be holding a Paraguay double chance ticket in the first match of the World Cup with the U.S.
You know your stuff when it comes to soccer, my man.
They did not profile like a 10-win team. They profiled like 7-win type teams. I can't wait to let 18 and 22-year-olds push it.
I made a call, to Vegas. I said, look, we actually need the favorite here.
Welcome back to Bear Bets, everybody. I'm your host, the Bear, Chris Fallica. Usually you're expecting me to say, joined here, as always, by Sammy P and Jeff Schwartz, but I am joined by somebody of much higher stature this week, and that's my good buddy, Stu Holden. We're going to kick around some football, not the typical college football and NFL that we're used to talking about. We are going to do our little 35,000-foot gaze over World Cup futures and group by group. And Stu, excited to get into it here, my man.
Bear, I'll always love being on with you, my brother. I love, because look, the World Cup's a very fun event. It's a massive event. It's also got a lot of different opportunities to get in on the betting markets. You're not going to pick Ohio State to win this one. All right. We're talking Spain, Argentina, all the wonderful countries out there. And I love when we get to welcome the general betting public into our soccer sphere, which you are such a big part of, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. And I always tell people who they recognize and know me from college football, and that's great. Being involved in that sport for so long and being around so many big events and big games, I always tell people the best thing that I have ever been involved in from a work standpoint, and the thing I was most proud of was being involved in ESPN's coverage of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Being there for 6 weeks was an unbelievable experience from a coverage standpoint of the sport, what it meant to that country, and just the melting pot of the world coming together. It was a great experience, and I can't wait to do that on U.S. soil this year again to really show the world what the sport means and how everybody coming together can have a great experience. So I guess we may as well kick it off with the U.S. group. Obviously, getting the automatic berth into the World Cup, despite their so-so performances leading up to the way. U.S. is favored to win the group. Group that is, I guess, if you could have drawn it up beforehand, Paraguay, Australia, and the UEFA team, which we think is going to be Turkey, based on who they draw. Like, do we expect the U.S. to get out of the group? Yes, I would think, but plus 130 to win, is that a little short here?
I think it is a little short. And it's important for context when we think about the groups that the U.S. was one of the automatic seeded teams, as you said, with Canada and Mexico, the two other hosts. And then of the 12 groups, the other 9 were the top countries in the world. So as much as we were hoping for a good draw, the teams in the US's group also have to feel that they got a good draw too, because they got 3 of the weaker pot 1 teams, and one of those being the US. And look, I think you laid it out pretty well, Bear. Of the teams that we could have had from pot 2 and pot 3, Australia and Paraguay are certainly 2 of the weaker teams, but it's important to think about what you consider with style of play and how these games are going to go as well. And I do think it went from a conversation about the U.S. getting out of the group to then, well, now the U.S. should be the favorite to win the group. And I do agree that they should be the favorite, but I think plus 130 is a little bit short there, because Paraguay is a team that was the second best defensive team in CONMEBOL. Mm-hmm. Australia is a team that plays a very risk-averse, very defensive strategy. And typically, those are the teams that the U.S. have struggled with. And we lost in the Nations League back in March against Panama, team that just sat behind the ball, said, go ahead, break us down. And historically in World Cups, the U.S. have thrived in this kind of underdog role. It's going to be interesting now how quickly the conversation has shifted to, well, this is a home World Cup. Well, now you guys are favorites and you're expected to win the group. I don't see a scenario in which the U.S. don't get out of the group, because it's important to remind your listeners that now 3 teams, third place finishers from the group go through, because the World Cup has expanded from 32 to 48 teams. So the U.S. will get out of this group. I'm still not entirely convinced it will be in that first place position.
And the team, which we don't know for sure it's going to be Turkey, like you can get a price on the qualifier from the UEFA playoff, getting it 5-1 to win this group. We saw Turkey; they were going to be a problem. They were a very difficult team to play, and certainly a fearless team, an aggressive team, a physical team. We saw that in Euros a couple of years ago. A team with some world-class players, like they could potentially be a big problem. And one thing's for sure, you know me. I can nearly guarantee you that on June the 12th, I am going to be holding a Paraguay double chance ticket in the first match of the World Cup with the U.S.
It doesn't sound like you at all, Bear. But also to your point, I know we are kind of assuming it is Turkey, and I do think that will be the team. Even if it's, let's say, Slovakia is the other team. This is a team that beat Germany during the World Cup qualification phase and pushed them to the end to where it was in the balance for Germany. So either of those European teams, and I knew that would be the case during the draw, that we would have to get a European team and it would be a qualifier. I think outside of what is Italy's potential path into the World Cup, which would be into Canada's group, yeah, that's probably the toughest qualifier. So I know on paper and at first we were rejoicing, this is a good draw. Don't get that part twisted, but this is by no means a layup, and the U.S. has to turn up, and especially in that first game, opening up against Paraguay on June 12th, they have the possibility and capabilities to make that a very tough game through 60, 70 minutes. And you're going to feel some uneasiness from that U.S. team just harboring some of that pressure.
Under 2.5. I'm already envisioning all of the unders and
under 2.5. I'd be hammering right now for that opening game. That's a 1-0 game. That's a 1-0 game.
So you mentioned the three hosts, U.S., Mexico, Canada, all get the auto bid into there. The U.S. form has been spotty. Mexico's form has probably been even worse, and they are plus 110 to win their group with South Korea, another UEFA playoff team, which we assume is going to be Denmark, and then Bafana, South Africa. This feels like a bet against Mexico to win this group, doesn't you?
Oh, 100%. Look, Mexico, I have said now for a couple of months, I think of the three home teams, they have the least amount of home field advantage. And I say that because, look, this is a rabid soccer fan base that is just loves the sport, loves their team, but also has these insane expectations of how good their team actually is. Right. And we saw this recently. They played some friendlies after 15, 20 minutes. The game was scoreless. After 60 minutes, the crowd turns on them. There's a reason they play more games, commercially in the U.S., and then B, just because of the type of fan they experience. If they're struggling in that opening match against South Africa, that crowd is going to turn on them. They will be booing them. And their expectation is that they win every single game. South Korea is a tough team. Son Heung-min is a very good player. They have a very good team, South Korea. And then if it's Denmark are also a good team. I know they lost to Scotland at the end of qualification, but they're a team that can make life very difficult. So I would be betting against Mexico winning that group. I love that bet.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to look at as well is you could bet exact position in a group. So maybe Mexico to finish second wouldn't be the worst possible play either. And the other host nation, Canada, they're in Group B with Switzerland. We're going to assume Italy, but that's a dangerous assumption being Italy's international form. Wales and Qatar, maybe one of those playoff teams as well. It feels like Canada is maybe the most in jeopardy of not getting out of this group. Look, it feels like this is the Swiss's group to lose. They're so strong in the midfield and on defense. Goals, I think, will be hard to come by. But I think Canada, if they can finish one of those better third place positions and get by, it probably will feel like a successful event for them.
I'm in the same ballpark as you, Bear. You know your stuff when it comes to soccer, my man. I just think that Canada have been in a little bit of mixed form. When Jesse Marsh, their coach, an American coach, came in, they had a great run in the Copa America in 2024. They got to a semifinal. They ended up losing to eventual champions Argentina. But if you actually look at how they got there, I think they had scored maybe 1 or 2 goals in that time span. They have such a talented attack with Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. they have some good players, but I just think still Canada's performance in the 2022 World Cup, they went out in the group stage, didn't win a game.
Feebly.
Host nations, look, I know there can be an element of something that can really help and gain momentum. That first game becomes so important, but for them, I see Switzerland topping this group. If they get Italy, that's a nightmarish draw for them. We continue to talk in circles about Italy, but the reality is if this team gets to the tournament, they are a good tournament team. And we saw that in the Euro as well. They can get to the knockout stages. And then even Qatar, I know they were so disappointing as a host nation in 2022. We see them in Gold Cups. We see them in qualifying. They have some players and they have an identity and a style of play, and they can really frustrate you. And so if there was a team from pot one that I could see going out in the group stage, that could be Canada, if I'm honest. And I know I could see them, if anything, as a third place team, but I could also see Canada. I'm not sure what those odds are for them not to advance, but I could potentially see that as well.
If you're looking for a little more Serie talk, I can add you to our Calcio e Conclave group text chat that we have. Basically, all it is Italian soccer and anything to do with Italian sports and Italian culture. Just kind of fire some random.
I love it, man. Get me in
if you want in, I'm more than happy to add you to the bunch.
Add me up.
Sure, the guys are pretty happy about that. But yeah, I'm sure you can probably get a very good number on Canada to finish bottom in that group as well. One of the favorites, one of the teams that has not had a great deal of success and been disappointing on the international stage, I should say, Brazil. Carlo Ancelotti brought in now to coach, manager of the Brazil national team. Where do we see them right now? Like, how has the transition and the first, I guess now, 6 months of Ancelotti's tenure in Brazil? How has that gone? We hear so much about Vini Jr. and his struggles at Real Madrid. Where do we see Brazil in terms of the contenders? Because look, they are in a group with Morocco, who is someone that I have an 80-1 bet, pizza money bet to win it all at a flyer. Host the African Cup of Nations coming up here soon. It looks like a team that could be building towards a really good run in the World Cup. Scotland, a very good defensive-minded team. Haiti's going to be bottom for sure, but Brazil is the massive favorite to win this group. But are they a legit threat now with Ancelotti?
I think one of the hardest things for people to do when it comes to Brazil is to analyze them through the current lens of where they are and where Brazilian soccer is, because the last time the World Cup was hosted in the United States was 94. They were the champions that year. They have not been champions since 2002. Only 8 nations still historically have ever won the World Cup. They are one of the most famed nations in that respect when it comes to prestige. But this is a Brazilian team that has not been that version of Brazil in a very, very long time. Look, they have so many talented attackers. They have this young kid, Estevao, now at Chelsea. He's 18 years old. They have Endrick at Real Madrid that hasn't quite hit that next gear. They have Vini Jr. They have Richarlison. They just have endless amounts of names. They actually have a good defense through the center of the field, but they've had to rely on, again, in old heads and going back to a guy like Casemiro in the midfield. And that's where I'm not sure. Ancelotti, for your audience, they might not be familiar with this. He's like this Don Carlo type of coach that just imagine this like suave Italian on the sideline with a cigar and just picks the right players at the right times and just sits back and is really that old school type of manager. And I think that's a really great thing for Brazil. But I still think Brazil just still have this vision and this expectation of what they should be. And I don't think that this team can handle that type of pressure, and it has the confidence and the mentality to do so. So when I look at this group, actually my best bet would be picking Morocco to win the group. I think they're about plus 450, and they open the tournament with Brazil, and they will be a team that I think is coming in with better form. We're going to see what happens with Morocco. The interesting thing with the African teams is they're actually about to start the African Cup of Nations, their version of their continent's tournament. And it actually is a really good thing for these countries. They have another couple of really high level competitive games heading into a World Cup. They didn't struggle in qualifying. They finished fourth in the World Cup in 22. And I just think Morocco has a lot of momentum. And I could see them beating Brazil in that opening game, and then they're off to the races. So I actually like that. And I still think Brazil is a team I could see in a quarterfinal. I just don't see Brazil as a team that wins this World Cup.
And I was going to mention as well, you could get Morocco to finish second in the group at -115. Brazil, a massive favorite, -475 to win the group, which I agree with you. I think that feels kind of high, but maybe you play Morocco -115 to finish second, and you're able to play around with the result of that first match and figure out a way to monetize something. You maybe take Morocco on the money line there, and then if you win, you're going to win the group. So there's some ways to go about that. It's weird because Morocco we're both high on, but they're a team that wildly disappointed last go around in AFCON. But with Hakimi and some of the other guys that they have on that roster, I think of all of the African teams right now, I think they are probably the most equipped to make a run here, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things, Bear, to think about sometimes these teams that go from, as we were talking with the U.S., you go from kind of being this unknown underdog, overachieving, to all of a sudden now everybody's talking about Morocco. The expectations are higher for this group. Can they embrace now being the favorite? They're hosting this African Cup of Nations as well. So even more so, an opportunity for them to win the African Cup of Nations. And let's see how we think about this team and what happens to their odds when it comes to the World Cup as well. If they end up winning the African Cup of Nations, and all of a sudden now the bookmakers start to think, whoa, this team's actually a legitimate threat. And then we see their odds shorten as well.
Well, a team that I think is a legitimate threat based on their performance in Euro a couple of years ago. A team that amazingly hasn't won a group stage match since they won World Cup in 2014, Germany. Gone out with terrible form the last couple of World Cups early, played very well, I thought, in the last Euro. It reminded me a little bit of 2010, where Germany, they had the down cycles before that World Cup. They came through, made the semi, played Spain. We were joking about that. We were talking about it before we went on here about Thomas Muller not being able to play in that match because of the yellow card accumulation. Maybe they beat Spain with him. Maybe they win that year, but they showed all the signs in the world of them being on the up going into the following Euro, which they did win. Then they won the 14 World Cup. And it was really a golden age of German football. And then they kind of had that down cycle again. But now it appears that they are headed back. They are a big favorite to win their group with Ecuador, Ivory Coast, and Curacao, who will be giving up goals left and right. I guess a couple of questions. Like, Musiala, who was fantastic in Euro, how is his rehab? Do we expect him to be a significant contributor in the World Cup? And if they don't have him back, do we think they are capable of getting to the semifinal or the final if he isn't there?
I don't see it with Germany. They kind of stumbled their way through qualifying. I did their games in Germany in the Nations League this past summer. Watch them lose to Portugal in that, and on home soil. They have a good coach in Julian Nagelsmann, a German coach that was really an up and coming star, coached at Bayern Munich, and now has tried to implement a little bit more of an attacking style of play, a little bit more of a fluid system with this German team. They actually have had a player that I can see really becoming a bit of a star over the next couple of months. He plays at Bayern Munich. His name is Leonard Karl. He's an 18-year-old young up-and-coming star that could be that next Musiala. And I could see him and Musiala becoming a really nice tandem of 10s in a position that they really haven't had a star since, Musiala had come on the scene. But I don't know what version of him we're going to see, Bear. When you're coming off an ACL, trying to get back up to match fitness and the type of form that he was in pre-injury. The other area, which you talked about, Thomas Muller, going all the way back there, is they just have not had a dominant number 9, a striker, since the days of Muller and then Miroslav Klose, who was Klose. I mean, the guy was just a lethal striker in front of the box. And that's a position they've been missing. And they've all of a sudden now this lanky giant German, Nick Woltemade, has emerged on the scene. He was at Stuttgart. He's now playing in the Premier League. He's scoring goals. but he's not quite a striker yet that I'm willing to say is that's a guy that's going to take you to a semifinal and a final of a World Cup. So actually, once again, when I'm looking at this group and thinking of the pot 2 teams that the U.S. could have had once again, Ecuador is a really dark horse type of team. They finished second in CONMEBOL qualifying in South America. They were one of the youngest teams at the World Cup in 22. They have some really good midfield and defensive superstars that are playing some of the biggest clubs in the world. Caicedo, Hincapié. They have Estupiñán, who's a left back who's playing in Italy. So I actually like, even in this group, potentially Ecuador at plus 400 to win that group. I think some of the South American teams in this World Cup, you absolutely should be looking at teams that are used to playing in warm climates, teams that have played at altitude before, and teams that can play a high intensity. Because I think some of the European teams are really going to struggle over the course of the group stage, but also now considering the World Cup and in the expanded format from 32 to 48, you have to win 8 games now to win a World Cup instead of 7. So there's an extra round in there. And I do think that squad depth and teams that have young players that can play at a very high intensity over at different climates are going to really thrive in this World Cup.
And I think you saw that last year with the Club World Cup in the U.S. and all of the weather delays and the massive heat wave and humidity wave that a lot of those European clubs came over, and it didn't necessarily go well for them, and it was affected. So that I think, and again, I think that's one of the things looking at. It's always dangerous to project paths or whatever, but looking at sides that maybe you're going to draw some more games, maybe in Seattle or a cooler climate or an indoor type facility as well. Those teams could be better off in the long run. One of those teams that is certainly better off in the long run, the team that did win the last European Championship, Spain. They are the favorite, a deserved favorite to win this World Cup. This group, I don't think really has much drama. It's going to be Spain and Uruguay for sure. You're going to probably play a little bit of a kickball game in that third group stage game. Cape Verde, of course, has been a great story getting to the World Cup, but it feels like you're going to see a situation here where if we're looking on to some of the other derivative markets and Golden Boot and such, team to lead the tournament in goals, I think Spain probably fits that bill because you could easily see like a 6 or a 7 spot when they draw Cape Verde.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's a perfect segue because you were just talking about teams that might play in better climates. Spain opened their first 2 matches of the tournament in Atlanta in an indoor stadium, climate controlled. They don't have to move. They don't have to travel. And the travel is a significant factor when it comes to this tournament. You're thinking about teams that are going to be going from either the United States down to Mexico, back to the United States, different time zones. Now, I do think there's a scenario where Spain have to end up traveling a significant amount of distance when they get to the round of 32 and round of 16. It is, as you said, very hard for us to predict games and venues based on either A, where teams finish, and B, which third place teams they end up playing. So outside of really getting into the weeds, I do think when it comes to Spain, that's a big factor for them. They open the tournament with Cape Verde. They could run up 7 or 8 goals easy in that match. And that's significant when it comes to a team with most goals. It comes to the Golden Boot conversation, which I know we're going to have in a little bit here. But I just think for Spain, that gives them an opportunity to really just settle into the tournament, get into a nice rhythm very early on, rotate some players so there when they hit that round of 32, round of 16, these players and the team are fresh and peaking at a high level of performance. So if anything, Spain were already, I think, the main favorite betting-wise coming into the tournament. Their odds dropped and got shorter once the draw came out, and I agree with that. I still like this bet, though, for Spain to win the World Cup. It's been since 2010 for them, but I could see them lifting this trophy again here in North America.
And you mentioned the draw. You don't want to get too much into the weeds, but I think there really is a big advantage for the team that does win this group. And while I mentioned that third place game, the third group stage game with Uruguay could be a little bit of a kickball match, there is a pretty significant, I think, edge for the winner of this group. You probably get Austria in the round of 32. Or the rather on the 16. Yeah, you're on the 32. I got that right the first time. See, all this expansion is kind of screwing me up here. But you get Austria, and then probably the winner of Colombia, Croatia would be your quarterfinal match, and then your semifinal, or maybe you get the group of that Belgium, Canada, South Korea, kind of team there in the semifinal like that. You're to get to the semifinal. So there really is, I think, a big advantage here. And I think that's why Spain, I think all that's baked in to the price of Spain being the favorite. But I think this is a group you definitely want to win and not lose and go over to the other side where you potentially have to play Argentina in your first knockout game.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the first time, FIFA have made it so the top 4 seeds in their ranking, if everybody wins their group, which looking at their groups, I do anticipate those top 4 teams win their group. They cannot meet until the semifinals, which is the first time. So they're trying to avoid situations and scenarios where the really big favorites coming in meet each other before that point. So that's another scenario in which that really helps some of these favorites, because then you're not meeting those teams till later in the tournament. So once again, I really do not see a world in which Spain don't make that stage of the tournament. But as we've seen in crazy things happen in World Cups, and there are upsets, but I think this tournament is a little bit more forgiving than FIFA tournaments and World Cups that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and one of those examples could be they're like if it were a truish type bracket, you potentially could have a France,
Spain, I think.
France, France, Germany, potentially you could have wound up with as well. But yeah, we'll see how the moving bracket goes along. Okay, tell me, look, I am the noted Belgium hater. That's not really true, but I think this team is overvalued and overrated for a team that's really accomplished nothing on the international stage. Every year you hear about Belgium, and they haven't done anything on the international stage. They're a big favorite still to win this group with Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand. Tell me why I'm crazy to bet Belgium 14-1 to not make it out of the group stage.
To not make it out of the group stage,
they're going to have to do something really wrong.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say to not win the group, to not make it out of the group stage. That really is. I think you got to take your Belgium hating glasses off for like 2 minutes there, Bear.
And I love Bruges. I love visiting Belgium. It was great. Bruges is a great city.
Look, New Zealand are a very poor team. Iran are unpredictable. They're an okay team. We saw the U.S. play them in 2022. Pulisic scored a late winner. Egypt has some talent, most notably Mo Salah. But I think I see Belgium still winning this group. But they are a team I think the U.S. could end up on a collision course with for the round of 16, I believe. If the U.S. were to win their group and Belgium were to win their group, the U.S. could play Belgium in that round of 16. And I actually think that would be a game. Yeah, I would. Of the teams that you could potentially face in whatever versions of brackets, I would take that. Because this is not the Belgium of 2018, which had Eden Hazard and a peak De Bruyne, a peak Lukaku, some really, really top level players. De Bruyne, we hope, will be back, and he's injured and out right now with a pretty bad injury. Lukaku is now 8 years on from that. He's not the same version of himself. Hazard is retired. Jeremy Doku is probably their best player who plays at Manchester City in the Premier League. So they have talent, but I'm with you. It's an aging back line.
Yes.
Yeah,
Vertonghen, I believe, is retired.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So more questions, and by the way, I watched them in qualifying, and they were struggling even through that stage. They changed their manager. Rudy Garcia is there, and I would have them not going any further than the round of 16. Absolutely not.
You're right. You talked me out of knocking them out completely in the first round.
They got a good draw. They got a good draw. Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand. I wanted to be with you on that one initially, but when you went 14-1 out of the group, you might as well light your money on fire. I think.
See, that's why we talk it out. All because it's a good number doesn't mean it's a good. But now, if they happen to wind up in the group with France, Norway, Senegal, now that would be a completely different story. Like, look, I don't think there really is a group of death per se, but this does seem like if there were a group of death now with these third place teams advancing, this would be it. But in the grand scheme of things, is this more of just kind of like we're talking it into existence? Are we overrating Norway a little bit just because of the existence of Holland? Are we overrating Senegal because they did get to the round of 16 in 2022 and they've got some great players like Sadio Mane and others? Is France plus 60 to finish runner-up in the group? Is that worth the play? Is this a situation where France totally implodes like they did in 2010? Where are we with France? Because right now I know there's a lot of drama around Mbappe at the club level as well.
Mm-hmm. I actually feel more so that this is a group of death after talking with our newly announced colleague, Thierry Henry, World Cup winner with France. He will be working with us next summer. And he talked about his experience of playing against Senegal in the World Cup. And he said, from his perspective, and certainly a French perspective, anytime you play a French colony, a former French colony in a country, there is just so much emotion and intensity within the game. And that game, this is something that's very unique to a World Cup. When you're talking about national teams and national representation, there's more than just the game on the field and the 22 players that are playing in that moment. And there is a lot more to that. So Senegal, whatever level they would play at in any given game, when they play France, their level is enhanced by 150 in the type of intensity and the emotion that they play with. And so I think that's a hard game. I do believe that Norway are a real team. I know it's not an uncommon opinion because people saw what they did, and we've talked about Italy's demise, but still to do what they did in qualification, the amount of goals that Erling Haaland has scored, the amount of the type of form he is in, to go to Italy in the San Siro and just absolutely destroy that team under pressure. They have another forward in Sorloth who plays in La Liga. They have young stars in the Bundesliga in Nusa and Odegaard in the Premier League. So this is not just a one-man team in Norway. It is a very good team with a coach that actually played in the World Cup in '94 for Norway. So he knows what it takes and the type of responsibility of representing your country. So I like this Norwegian team, and I think it's going to prove to be a very, very difficult game for France. And if there's one game that I'm asking my bosses to call in the group stage, it is France against Norway. I think that game is going to be epic. And France have been in the last two World Cup finals. They won in 2018. They lost after Mbappe scored a hat trick in 22. They will be in the late stages of this tournament, but I think this group gets a little tricky for them, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle the early stages.
France Senegal, as Thierry Henry was mentioning, that is the first game for France. That is in New York on June 16th, and then you're hoping to be in Boston for Norway France on June 26th. Last group. England, a big favorite here. Croatia, Ghana, the Black Stars, and Panama, a team that we're all certainly familiar with here in CONCACAF. England kind of made a mess of their group in the last Euros, and they uglied their way to the final before they got predictably beaten by a much better Spain side. Do we think they get it figured out here in the group stage? Is Croatia too old, or are they like the grizzled, wily, veteran, experienced bunch that we mentioned France's success? 18, this is the team that France beat in the final. 2022, they made it to the semis before they went down. Luka Modric's last go around, you would think with this group. Is this a Croatia team that's past their prime, or just good enough to make this uncomfortable for England or whomever they ultimately would play in the knockout round?
I think it would be your option B there, which is this. They are still good enough to make this uncomfortable for England. That game will be played in Dallas, indoor stadium. So I think that makes for the best spectacle of those two teams because they get an opportunity to play in a great environment and a great situation. But I still think England. We think of Ghana in the U.S. is in a different way than I think the rest of the world does. Because we've had such a history with that team. My goodness, I still think of the Black Stars knocking us out of the 2010 World Cup. This is not that same Ghanaian team. I think England won't struggle with them. Panama, we know very well on this side of the pond. England are not as familiar. They will make life difficult for England for 20, 30 minutes, but England have too much quality and will beat Panama pretty comfortably, I believe. So I don't see England struggling with this group, but I do still see that Croatia game as one that maybe it's a draw. Maybe it's a little closer than I think what people might expect when it comes to Croatia and England. I'm still not entirely sure. Bear, what are they going to do with Bellingham? This is Thomas Tuchel's first World Cup as an international coach. He's been thinking methodically about his team and his depth and rotating and trying to put them in a position to play 7 or 8 games as opposed to we're here for 3 games. They're one of the few nations that I think come into World Cups thinking, 7 or 8, whereas the US are, let's get to the round of 16 quarterfinals. So England's still an element of unpredictability, but I don't see this as being their World Cup where it comes home back to England. And I would be favoring some other teams in that respect.
And you potentially be looking down the road again, maybe a semifinal matchup with Brazil if the projections on the odds play out. And as you and I both know from watching and you being a part of the international soccer, like you've been, like it does not always play out the way the odds suggest. When we get back, we will talk some overall futures, Golden Boot, win it all. When we're back on Bear Bets. Back again, Bear Bets, happily joined by Stu Holden to break down some early World Cup group thoughts, some betting thoughts, some Golden Boot thoughts, some title thoughts, and anything and everything else in between. Golden Boot is an award that we like to look at. Obviously, we know the big bets, the big names: Mbappe, Kane, Messi, Haaland, Lamine Yamal. Those are the favorites, the short shots to win the Golden Boot. But I would be looking potentially at some players on Germany. We mentioned Voltemata earlier. Spain, we mentioned, could put up a big number on Cape Verde, and you want teams that are going to have the potential not only to play a lot of games, but face a couple of really bad teams where they could put up 6-7. Lautaro Martinez is someone with Argentina who had a great summer a couple of years ago, and maybe with Messi, not peak Messi, what we're used to, he's 20-1. I think that's someone that could be interesting. So I might be looking at a Voltemata. I know you're not necessarily high on Germany, but I think they could get a right path. Lautaro Martinez, but you were mentioning someone from Spain that you thought might be worth a play at a really nice number.
Yeah. You might have to write this one down. Mikel Oyarzabal. It's Oryazabal. And they look, Spain.
That would be a Basque. Spanish.
Yeah, I could go full, authentic pronunciation. Oyarzabal. Yeah. But look, Spain are a team that we both expect to score a lot of goals. They don't play with a traditional striker in the sense of a guy who just hangs out up top. They're a team that plays with wingers that come inside and create chances. And you see Lamine Yamal's name on that list, but typically the way that they like to play is that their wingers come inside and they take players on 1v1, and then they're laying the ball on the doorstep for a player to arrive late in the box. And Oyarzabal is a player that had 6 goals in qualifying. Mikel Merino is another one. He plays at Arsenal. They play in the same type of way. They combine underneath, and then they are those players that at the box at the end. So I think the latest odds I saw from him were around 40-1, depending on where you bet. And to me, that's worth a little bit of a bet. I would be putting money on somebody like him in a game where you could play against Cape Verde and the group that they have to rack up some goals early. And then still, these players are players that have scored goals late in tournaments. Merino scored in the final for Spain when they beat England in the Euro. So these are still players that will be in those situations to score goals. And if you also think about teams, the way that they defend Spain, they try to defend their wingers because those are the most dangerous players. And oftentimes Lamine Yamal is getting double and triple team. So he's having to dish the ball in the final third in and around the box. And that's when those other players come to life. So I like, obviously, a guy like Mbappe. And if France, though, as we've said, have a tougher group, maybe he doesn't get the chance to score a hat trick or 5 goals or something in the group stage. And then you're relying on him hopefully coming to life later in the tournament. So That's why if I was looking, it would maybe be a guy like Harry Kane, who's taking penalties and is going to get more opportunities to score against Panama. But I like somebody from Spain. And if I had to pick value, I would be going for one of their strikers in Marino or Oyarzabal.
And we think that Oyarzabal is going to be kind of a first choice in the starting 11. He's not going to be a guy who kind of comes in off the bench with the embarrassment of riches that they have.
Well, they might rotate at times, but again, we're expecting Spain to play 8 games. So, whether he's playing every single minute or Morata's playing a little bit or Marino's playing, these guys get chances and lots of opportunities and goals, and they rotate across the board. So, yeah, I'm going to go as soon as we finish this podcast and stick a little something on Oyarzabal. So I got to put my money where my mouth is.
Beautiful. I love it. We'll have to. I can't wait for the summer. We're just going to have a nice little sit down, you and me, and just have a daily check in with everything.
Hey, there's no favorite pastime for me, Bear, than a summer tournament and seeing you once the games start, head off to the corner, get your laptop out, and just start hammering the live bets and the unders and I just love checking in with you, man, during the tournament. It's one of my favorite pastimes. I have to reserve that seat for you so I can see you.
And that was great because the first, I did Belmont Stakes when I first came over to Fox. And then the first massive match, I was in Australia with you for Women's World Cup. And that was like one of the kind of just, I didn't really know anybody. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I'd known Rob from his time at ESPN and known some people that I met at Belmont when I first came out. But I was just kind of sit off to the right-hand side of the office compound there, and the one little single recliner chair, off to the side, watch the matches, laptop up, and you'd be coming in. Well, what do we got? What do we got? It would almost always be whomever to keep a clean sheet in the first half or under a goal and a half. And
us degenerates find each other quite easily.
Speaking of finding, have you been to Basque Country?
I have not. It's the one part of Spain. It's a sore subject. I want to get there, man. It's beautiful. I've heard it's one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
I have not been there. I've been to Sevilla. Is my favorite city in Spain. I love Madrid, and the Code Malaga is beautiful as well. Wasn't as high on Barcelona, but Basque Country, I'm dying to go. That's why I was curious if you had been there, because I need to try and sell my wife. Supposedly some of the best cuisine in the world as well.
Yeah. I think what we're talking about here is just selling everybody on Spain, like in general, life,
yes,
living and winning the World Cup.
Gone. See ya. The whole concept of an afternoon nap every day.
What's the hate about that?
Yeah. Exactly. What's terrible?
I come back sweating jamon and wine every time I leave Spain.
A little jaunt around Mercado San Miguel and Madrid. Yeah, I'm getting excited for planning the summer vacation now. But if I'm making a bet here, I said I bet Morocco with a massive number. It was about the price, and maybe like we were talking about earlier, if they do win AFCON, the hype, I think, will be through the roof for them in that group. Not only getting out, potentially winning it, those numbers will be long gone. I am not a player, a bettor who likes to just bet the favorites, but don't you just want to bet Spain right now at 450? It's one of those things that it's kind of like betting Ohio State in college football before the year. Like, just bet Ohio State to win at the start of the year, and then come playoff time, you're going to be happy that you have Ohio State at plus 450 or whatever in your pocket. And that's what we're looking at here with Spain, right? It's just a bet you have to make. They are the best team, potentially the easiest path in the knockout round. You can kind of look around for bigger and better prices on some dark horses, but I think this feels like Spain's the team to beat, right?
I think that's perfect analysis. I think it's a team you want to have in the bag, and then if you have to hedge later and you can get some good odds on teams that they're playing later in the tournament, it's one you want to have in the back pocket. I actually like Argentina plus 800 as well. They are the defending champion. It's very hard to defend the title. Messi's 4 years older now. He scored in every round of the knockout stage in 2022. I'm interested to see how he is used in this tournament. I don't expect him to play every single minute of every game, which is essentially what he did in 2022. But the good news for them is that they have a style in which they're very good defensively. They don't concede many goals. That favors knockout tournaments. They have a young player in Julian Alvarez, who's not as young as he was in 22, but is now more able to take on a bigger role and responsibility in big games. So I still like Argentina to be in the very late stages of that tournament. And the only team on that list that we just showed there that has not won a World Cup is Portugal. And as I said earlier in this pod, only 8 teams in the history of the World Cup have won the World Cup. And Portugal would probably be my most likely team that could join that elite club. The Netherlands maybe in the mix, Colombia potentially. But I think Portugal have one of the best midfields in the world. But yet, I just said that Messi had scored in every round of the knockouts in 22. Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be 40 or 41 years old for the tournament next summer. He has yet to score ever in the knockout stages of a World Cup. And I just don't see still with I know he's still a very good player. He can score lots of goals. He didn't qualifying, but I just would not be putting my money on him as a player that could lead that team to a World Cup title. And you're like, oh, and I can't do it.
Like we saw it firsthand in the Euros a couple of years ago. Like he's not unbelievable career, one of the greatest players ever. But now you're talking 2 years removed from that. With Portugal has so many other better options.
How far do you see Portugal going, Bear? Because I like this team. I watched them firsthand in the Nations League, and a very, very good team, good defense, good goalkeeper.
Well, one of my best bet, a bet that I have made already, is Portugal to reach the quarterfinals at plus 110. And I think it's a real. Roberto Martinez took like a ton of grief kind of for putting Ronaldo on the squad for Euros, and then if you put him on, you were kind of obligated to play him, and I think that created some problems. But I think as that tournament went on, Portugal were better. And I think Portugal are in a group that they're going to win. And I think if you look at the bracket, winning that group gives you a very reasonable path to make a bit of a run here with who you could draw in the round of 16 and on. So I think Portugal, if you're talking about maybe playing Ivory Coast or maybe Switzerland to get to that quarterfinal, I think that's about as easy. No. Once you get to the knockout rounds, no paths are easy. But in terms of like what it could be, I think Portugal plus 110 to make the quarters is a run. And again, you're looking at a team that could wind up running up against Argentina in that quarterfinal as well. So look, if Portugal were to make the semis, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I think where they are right now, I think they would be. I think Roberto Martinez and that group would be very, very disappointed if they did not make at least a quarterfinal.
I'm with you. I like that bet. Portugal play their first 2 games in Houston. That's going to be indoor matches for them. I think they'll smash Uzbekistan. I think they'll smash whoever they end up getting from the qualification. And then the Colombia game in Miami, that's going to be a spicy game. And I've seen Colombia play in Miami. That's going to be basically Bogota North.
You have any stories about that?
Oh yeah. I think there was about 85,000 in a 60,000 capacity stadium that day against Argentina. But that's going to be a tough game for Portugal. But even if they finish first or second, I think that's a team that is going to be very difficult to deal with in the World Cup. And I'm with you. I like Roberto Martinez as a coach. He has experience of taking Belgium's golden generation to a semifinal in 2018. And I think he just has a very level-headed approach and very experienced international coach, as long as he can keep our guy Ronaldo focused and facing forward. But I think all of this being said, Bear, I get excited thinking about it. We're giving you the odds pre-tournament. A lot of this is still going to change as we even get closer to the tournament based on form. Injuries become a very important part of it. Squad rotation, depth, climate, supporters, momentum. All of these things are what makes World Cups great. And some of these teams can capture lightning in a bottle, as Morocco did in 2022. But usually it is the big boys at the end of the tournament. And that's who you should expect being in semis and finals. And there's a group of players that play at a very high level consistently in big game matches. And that's what separates teams. And that's why there's a reason that you want to have a team like Spain in the back pocket. You want to have something on Argentina. And then maybe you want to have some long shots that you can potentially get a little bit of value for as you head in and see how those teams do with some unpredictability. But I can't wait, man. And I know you'll be all over it as you always are.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a great summer, and I can't wait to be a part of it with you and everybody else on our great Fox soccer team and all the newcomers that we have this year as well. This was fun. I can promise everybody, and I'm going to promise you right now that we're going to do it again in much more detail as we get closer to the event this summer. Stu, can't thank you enough. Can't thank you, the listener out there. Rate, review, subscribe. Appreciate you checking us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. More college football talk coming up later in the week. But
Go
for
Bucks!
Now, give me an OH, Stu.
OH. It's only because my wife is holding me hostage to my left, and Clemson didn't make the playoffs, for full disclosure. But I got money on Ohio State.
I think the winner of Ohio State Miami has an excellent chance to.
Let's go.
I shouldn't say if Miami were to get past A&M, but yeah, Ohio State is certainly a well-deserving favorite. I'm not taking anything away from them after the Big Ten title loss. So go Bucks. I can't say Ipte or Clemson for you because they're out. We had our talks about that early in the year. Anyway, this time, another place, another story. Remember, let's be back. Warriors a new win.